This video is a follow-on from the previous 14 videos dealing with price in the precious metals markets. If you haven't seen those videos, I'd recommend you doing so before watching this one. So let's pick up where we left off and look at inflation some more. In the previous 4 videos, we looked at inflation, its adverse effects, the CPI and various narratives put out to misdirect the masses. In this video, I'm going to focus on what I believe the Fed is intent on doing. As I said in the previous video, it's always tricky to talk about intentions because, as it stands, I cannot prove anything. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't think the Fed has any intention of tackling inflation. Indeed, I'd go further than that and say they want to create more inflation. Indeed, I'd go even one step further than that and say they want to create hyperinflation. Why? Well, because their ultimate aim is to inflate the debt away. This is called monetizing the debt. If anyone listening doesn't understand what I mean when I say monetize the debt, it means they want to render the debt redundant by means of inflation. To aid understanding about this, we have to make a distinction between nominal values and real values. Nominal value is the named value, whereas real value is what something is really worth. I think this distinction is best explained by using a hypothetical scenario. Let's assume that you have a $100 bill in your wallet or purse and you keep it there for a whole year. If there were no inflation for that period, then that $100 bill would hold its value over that time, meaning you could buy the same amount of goods at the end of the year as you could at the start of the year. If, however, there were a constant inflation rate of 10% for that same time period, then that $100 bill would lose 10% of its value over that time, meaning that you wouldn't be able to buy the same amount of goods at the end of the year as at the start of the year. You could only buy 90% as compared to what you could buy in an environment with no inflation. This is perhaps better expressed by talking about purchasing power of a currency. The purchasing power of a currency is the ability of that currency to buy goods and services, and purchasing power decreases in direct accord with the inflation rate. So, in an inflationary environment, over the period of, say, a year, with a constant inflation rate of 10%, $100 will still be $100. You will still have that same $100 bill in your wallet or purse. Its nominal value remains the same. The physical currency itself hasn't magically changed. What changes is the purchasing power. Its purchasing power has decreased by whatever the inflation rate is. Going back to our earlier distinction, we can say that its nominal value hasn't changed, while its real value has decreased. In short, in an inflationary environment, currencies will necessarily lose value in real terms. This is why inflation is such a problem, and it also shows why it's so important that any medium of exchange holds value over time. I've done a video entitled Money versus Currency regarding store of value, which I recently re-uploaded for anyone who's interested in finding out more about this. Let's turn our attentions now to debt. Let's imagine that you've borrowed $1,000 from someone and that you've agreed to pay them back in full in a year's time. If there were no inflation for that period of a year, then no problem. If, however, there were a constant inflation rate of 10% for the same time period, then that $1,000 would lose its value over that year. At the end of the year, when the debt was due to be paid back, you'd give the person back their $1,000, be that in the form of cash, the physical form of currency, or you do a bank transfer moving digits from your account to theirs. But either way, that person would have lost 10% of purchasing power in that period. The nominal value of the currency given back was $1,000, but the real value was only $900. Please note that the nominal value stays the same all the while, no matter what happens to the real value. If the lender had any sense, he would ask for compensation for the loss in purchasing power, commensurate with the inflation rate. So, assuming a constant 10% inflation rate, he would really want to be paid back $1,100 at the end of the time period in order to make up for the loss in value due to inflation. This scenario, of course, doesn't account for any interest that might be due. Ordinarily, anyone lending currency to someone demands interest in addition to the amount loaned known as the principal. The important thing to consider here is that in real terms, the currency which went towards paying the debt has lost value. How much value it lost depended on the inflation rate. It should also be said that if the inflation rate reaches 100%, then the debt essentially becomes worthless. The debt is paid back, but it's paid back with currency that has lost all its value. This is basically what I believe the central banks are banking on. I'll split this topic into a number of videos, so there's another however many to follow. In the next video, I'll continue to talk about debt monetization and central banks. Wise up and rise up.